the silent void. You grew up with everything except affection. Your parents were there. They provided food. They paid the bills. They drove you to school. Maybe they even showed up at your events. On paper, they did their part. But something was always missing. Not something you could point to, not something others could see. It was quiet, invisible, a kind of emptiness that didn't make a sound, but made a home inside you. They didn't hug you when you cried. They didn't ask how you felt. They didn't look at you like someone who mattered. They just functioned and expected you to do the same. You learned early on. Feelings were inconvenient. Tears were weakness. And needing too much? That made you a burden. So you stopped asking. You stopped showing. You smiled when it hurt. You performed when you wanted to disappear. You told yourself, this is normal. And the world agreed. Because how do you explain a wound that no one else can see? This is the silent void, the space left behind when love is absent, but responsibility is present. When the people who were supposed to teach you how to feel taught you to shut down instead. You became the child who acted mature for their age, the one who didn't complain, the one who helped everyone, who understood too much, too soon. But deep inside, there was a scream no one heard. Not because you didn't make noise, but because you never dared to. You carried that silence into your teenage years, into your relationships, into your job, into the way you talk to yourself when no one is around. And now, maybe you wonder, why do I feel so empty? Why do I keep seeking love that never stays? Why do I feel broken when nothing bad ever happened? This is where the story begins, not with drama, not with chaos, but with a quiet heartbreak, the kind that grows roots in silence. If this speaks to you, then stay, because you are not alone, and it's time to put words to the pain no one ever acknowledged. This is the story of the love that never came, and the strength it takes to stop pretending you didn't need it. The emotional ice, parents who don't know how to warm. There's a kind of cold that doesn't come from winter. It comes from home, from a house where the heat is on, but the heart is frozen, where parents don't scream, don't hit, but also don't hug, don't ask, don't see. These are emotionally cold parents, not monsters, not villains, just people who never learned how to offer warmth because they never received it themselves. And so, they raise their children with the same chill in their voice, the same frost in their presence. You might remember phrases like, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Don't be dramatic. Feelings are for the weak. You're too sensitive. Or the classic, you're fine. They didn't mean to hurt you, but they did. Because every time you reached for comfort and were met with indifference, every time you tried to express pain and were told to get over it, every time you needed a safe place and were given silence, you learned a dangerous lesson. Your feelings don't matter. Cold parents don't necessarily yell. They don't always abandon. They don't even realize they're causing harm. But their indifference becomes ice in your chest. You grow up never knowing how to handle your emotions because you were taught to bury them. You grow up mistaking numbness for strength because no one ever modeled vulnerability. You grow up terrified of expressing need because love always felt conditional. And over time, something happens. You build a wall, not out of bricks, not out of spite, but out of necessity. That wall becomes your survival. You become low maintenance. You say, I'm fine, when you're breaking. You become the one who listens, who gives, who fixes, but never asks for anything back. Because you learned that expressing emotion gets you nothing. Or worse, rejection. The emotional ice doesn't melt on its own. It follows you into adulthood, into relationships, into the way you parent your own children, into how you speak to yourself. And what's most tragic is that many people don't even realize they grew up in emotional coldness. Because no one ever hit them. Because there was food on the table. Because things could have been worse. But the absence of abuse is not the presence of love. You can die of cold even when the air is quiet. And the children of emotionally cold parents, they learn to survive in frost, but they forget how to feel. The wound is subtle, but it's deep. It creates adults who panic when things get too intimate, who freeze when someone gets too close, who crave love and run from it at the same time. Because to them, love has always meant walking on ice. This part of the story is not about blame. It's about recognition, about giving a name to something that shaped you in silence, so that you can begin, slowly, to warm yourself, to learn that your emotions are not too much, that your softness is not a weakness, and that you don't have to live in winter forever. You can thaw, you can heal, you can break the cycle, but first, you must name the cold. The child who learned not to feel. There is a moment, quiet and almost invisible, when a child realizes, my feelings are too much. Not because someone said it directly, but because every time she cried, the room got colder. Every time he reached out, no one reached back. And so, the child adapts. She learns to stop crying. He learns to stop needing. They all learn to perform. They become the good kid, the easy one, the one who never causes trouble, the one who gets praise for being so mature for their age. But inside, a storm is raging. You see, children don't stop feeling. They just stop showing it. They lock it away, push it down, hide it behind straight A's, quiet smiles, and perfect behavior. Because what every child wants more than anything is to be loved. And if expressing pain means rejection, if asking for comfort means being told they're too sensitive, if being vulnerable leads to silence or shame, they will do whatever it takes to avoid that pain again. So they perform. The girl who wanted to be held becomes the one who holds everyone else. The boy who wanted to be heard becomes the one who listens to everyone else. They become what their parents needed and forget what they needed. And the world celebrates them. She's so independent. He's so strong. But no one sees the price, the anxiety, the chronic guilt, the panic at the idea of being a burden, the inability to rest because resting feels like failure. They smile, they achieve, they keep going, while something inside whispers, "I'm not okay." But they don't say it because they don't know how, because long ago, they buried the part of themselves that needed care. And the longer they stay in this role, the harder it becomes to reconnect with what they feel. Because if you've spent a lifetime performing strength, how do you admit you're tired? If no one ever taught you that emotions are safe, how do you allow yourself to feel them now? This is the silent tragedy of children who learned not to feel. They grow up disconnected from themselves, from their own needs, from their own hearts. And when they try to love others, they struggle. Not because they don't want to love, but because they don't know how to let themselves be loved. To them, love has always been about earning, proving, achieving, never just being. This part of the story is about the mask, the brave face, the strong exterior, and the tender, frightened child behind it, still waiting for someone to notice. You may be that child, now grown, now tired, still carrying the performance. But here's the truth. You were never too much. You were never too needy. You were just a child who wanted to feel. And now you can start again, not by pretending, not by pleasing, but by gently, bravely feeling again. The love that never came, and the love she learns to reject. She spent her whole childhood waiting for a touch that never came, a word of affection, a soft look, a moment of being seen, truly seen, but it never arrived. So she learned to live without it. And when she grew up, she told herself, "I don't need anyone. I'm fine on my own. I'm strong." But deep down, something was still missing. Not attention, not company, love. Not the kind of love that demands, the kind that sees, that holds without conditions, that says, "You're safe here." But here's the truth no one tells you. If you've never received love, it becomes hard to accept it when it finally comes. So she becomes the adult who pulls away when someone gets too close, the one who laughs off compliments, who changes the subject when things get emotional, who runs the moment someone tries to love her gently, because love now feels unfamiliar, suspicious, dangerous. How could she trust something that was never part of her reality? Love didn't knock on her door when she was a child. Why would it now? So she sabotages, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being abandoned, fear of needing too much, fear of being fully seen and then rejected. She becomes the partner who pushes others away, who chooses emotionally unavailable people, who says things like, "I'm not good at relationships," or "I don't believe in soulmates." But the truth is simpler and sadder. She doesn't believe she's lovable, because if the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally didn't, what does that say about her? She questions every kind gesture, analyzes every silence, waits for the moment it all falls apart, and sometimes she's the one who makes it fall. Not because she doesn't want love, but because receiving it makes her feel exposed, raw, unworthy, and so a painful cycle begins. She longs for connection, but can't let herself have it. She craves intimacy, but doesn't know how to hold it. She says she wants love, and then finds reasons to reject it. It's not self-sabotage, it's self-protection. Because when love never came, she built walls instead of bridges, armor instead of trust, distance instead of intimacy. And breaking those patterns, it feels like walking into fire. But here's the part that matters. She is not broken. She is not unlovable. She is just wounded. Wounded by absence, by neglect, by the echo of what she never received. And healing doesn't begin with another person. It begins with herself, learning to sit with affection without flinching, learning to believe that kindness doesn't always come with a trap, learning to stay when love knocks gently instead of loudly. She may not have received love as a child, but she can learn to receive it now, slowly, clumsily, tenderly. And when she does, she'll discover something powerful. Love doesn't need to be earned. It just needs to be received. And she, finally, can learn to open the door. The inner voice that hurts and isn't yours. There's a voice inside you. You hear it every day. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it shouts, but it's always there. You're not enough. You're too much. You're unlovable. You're a burden. No one will stay. Don't mess it up. And the worst part is, you believe it. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. This voice didn't come out of nowhere. You weren't born doubting yourself. You weren't born ashamed. You learned to feel that way, one painful interaction at a time. That voice? It sounds like you, but it isn't yours. It's borrowed. It came from the cold silences, from the sighs of disappointment, from the rolled eyes, from the moments your tears were ignored, from the times you were told you were too sensitive, too needy, too dramatic. It came from the absence of affection, from love that was measured, distant, or simply withheld. You internalized it, because that's what children do. They don't think, my parent is emotionally unavailable. They think, something must be wrong with me. And so the voice was born. It took root in your mind and made itself at home, not as a visitor, but as a ruler. It began to shape how you see the world and how you see yourself. Every time you fail, it says, told you so. Every time someone loves you, it warns, they'll leave. Every time you succeed, it mutters, not good enough. It sabotages your joy. It strangles your peace. It poisons your sense of self. And for years, you thought this voice was truth, but it's not. It's programming, old, outdated, and cruel. And most importantly, it isn't yours. You inherited it, not genetically, but emotionally, from people who never learned to speak with kindness, from parents who were wounded themselves, from caretakers who couldn't give what they never received. You became the echo of their silence, the reflection of their coldness. You wore their disappointment like a second skin and mistook that for identity. But here's the breakthrough. If you learned that voice, you can unlearn it. You can start to question it, interrupt it, talk back to it, replace it. Because deep down, beneath the layers of fear and shame, there's another voice, a quieter one, the voice of your true self, the one that says, you are worthy, you are enough, you are not broken, you never were. But that voice, it needs space, it needs practice, it needs you to believe it, even when it feels uncomfortable. This is the work of healing, not erasing the past, but reclaiming your mind, your narrative, your identity. You don't have to live forever with someone else's voice in your head. You don't have to carry their coldness. You don't have to confuse inherited pain with truth. You are allowed to speak to yourself with compassion, to rewrite the script, to create a voice that heals instead of harms. And when you do, you won't just feel better, you'll feel free. The life of someone trying to earn love. Some people walk through life with a secret hunger, not for food, not for success, but for love, the kind they never truly received. And instead of believing they deserve it just for existing, they learn to believe they must earn it. Be the best, be the strongest, be the most reliable, the most helpful, the most selfless. That's how love will come, right? So they try. Oh, how they try. They say yes when they want to say no. They show up when they're exhausted. They hold space for others, even when they're falling apart inside. They become the friend who never asks for anything, the partner who carries the weight of the entire relationship, the employee who never takes a sick day, the sibling who fixes everything for everyone else. They overfunction, overgive, overprove, because deep down, there's a terrified child inside whispering, if I'm good enough, maybe this time they'll love me. If I'm useful enough, they won't leave. If I'm perfect, I won't be rejected. And for a while, it looks like it's working. People like them, praise them, depend on them, but inside, they're exhausted, burned out, lonely, because love that you have to earn never fills the hole. Affection tied to performance isn't love, it's a transaction. And here's the heartbreaking truth. You can achieve everything. You can be perfect in every role, but it will never feel enough if the part of you that's still waiting for unconditional love never got it. You see, what was missing wasn't effort. You gave everything. What was missing was warmth, presence, comfort, a sense of being wanted just as you are. That can't be bought with achievement. It can't be traded for success. It's not something you win. It's something you receive. But if you've never experienced that, how do you stop chasing and start receiving? You begin by seeing the pattern, by noticing how you shrink your needs, hide your pain, and overextend, all in the hope that someone might finally say, I love you just as you are. But the healing starts when you say it first. When you begin to treat yourself like someone who doesn't have to earn love anymore. You are allowed to rest, to ask for help, to set boundaries, to exist without explaining or performing. You are allowed to stop running after love and let it meet you where you are. Because love that's real doesn't ask you to break yourself in half to deserve it. It doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't need you to carry everything. It just needs you to show up, whole, messy, human. And the moment you realize you never had to prove yourself to be worthy, that's when the healing begins. That's when you stop living a life of performance and start living a life of belonging. Toxic relationships and unconscious repetition. Why do we keep choosing the same pain over and over again? Why does someone who grew up with cold, distant parents often find themselves in cold, distant relationships? The answer lies not in logic, but in the unconscious, in the mind's deep craving for what's familiar, even when it hurts. You see, when love was distant, conditional, or absent in childhood, your nervous system learned to associate disconnect with connection. It sounds twisted, but it's survival. A child doesn't say, "My parent can't love me." A child says, "This must be what love feels like." So later in life, when they meet someone emotionally available, kind, soft, present, it feels uncomfortable, foreign, suspicious. But when they meet someone who pulls away, withholds affection, ignores their needs, or makes them feel small, there's a strange sense of recognition. The pain is familiar. It fits. And so they fall in love, not with the person in front of them, but with a pattern their body remembers. This is unconscious repetition. They don't choose toxic relationships because they want pain. They choose them because pain was their first language. It's what they were taught to expect and accept. They enter relationships where they have to prove their worth, where love is something earned, not given, where they chase, beg, apologize, just like they did as children. And when things go wrong, they blame themselves, because that's the role they know. If I just try harder, maybe they'll love me. If I just fix myself, maybe they'll stay. But the truth is, they are reenacting a childhood wound, trying to rewrite the ending with different characters, but the same script. This cycle is exhausting. It breaks hearts, and it keeps the original trauma alive, because every new rejection reopens the old one. Every distant partner echoes the parent who couldn't connect, and every failed attempt reinforces the false belief, "I am unlovable." But here's the shift. Once you see the pattern, you can break it. It begins with asking hard questions. Why does love feel like work? Why do I feel drawn to people who hurt me? Why do I feel bored with kindness and drawn to chaos? These aren't signs of dysfunction. They're signs of deep, unhealed wounds. And healing begins by doing something radical, choosing what is unfamiliar but safe, leaning into relationships that feel boring at first because they are healthy, allowing yourself to be loved without having to earn it. It won't feel natural at first. It may feel awkward, even scary, but it's how you begin to rewire your heart. You were taught love through survival, but now you can learn love through safety. You don't have to repeat the past. You don't have to chase pain to feel alive. You don't have to relive your childhood through your relationships. You can choose different. You can choose peace. You can choose love that heals instead of love that hurts. And that is the beginning of freedom. The deconstruction of idealized love. There comes a moment in the healing journey that feels like an earthquake, not because something is being built, but because something is finally crumbling. The illusion, the fantasy, the hope that maybe one day your parents would become who you needed them to be. This is the deconstruction of idealized love. It's when you stop seeing your parents as who you wanted them to be and start seeing them as who they actually are and always were. It's not about blaming. It's about grieving. Grieving the hugs that never came, the apologies that were never spoken, the comfort that never arrived. Grieving the version of your childhood that you deserved, but didn't live. And that grief, it's heavy. It breaks something inside, because you realize they did what they could, but what they could give wasn't what you needed. Maybe they were cold because no one ever taught them warmth. Maybe they were distant because that's how they survived. Maybe they truly believed that providing food and shelter was enough, but your heart didn't need just survival. It needed connection, softness, safety. You waited for years, hoping they would change. You tried being better, quieter, more helpful. You tried earning what should have been given freely. But now, you see it. They won't become the parents you needed, not because they're bad, but because they're limited. And that realization, it hurts. It feels like betrayal. Like giving up on a dream you've carried since childhood. But it's not giving up. It's waking up. It's stepping out of the illusion so you can finally stand in truth. And that truth sets you free. Because once you stop chasing the love that never came, you make space to create the love you always needed. You stop knocking on closed doors and start building your own home, one filled with the warmth, softness, and compassion you longed for. This part of the journey is raw. It's the breaking of a spell, the ending of a silent hope, but it's also the beginning of something real. You begin to parent yourself in ways they never could. You begin to speak to yourself with kindness. You begin to surround yourself with people who see you, truly see you. You begin to rewrite the story, a story that no longer waits for someone else to love you the right way, but teaches you how to love yourself in ways you were never taught, and that is liberation. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of clarity. You no longer need to fix your parents. You no longer need to carry their limitations as your own. You no longer need to wait for a love that's never coming, because now you understand. Their inability to love you as you needed was never a reflection of your worth. And as painful as that truth is, it's the key to freedom. To stop grieving what was never there and to start building what you deserve now. The inner reconstruction, giving yourself the love that was missing. Healing doesn't always begin with a breakthrough. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a quiet decision that says, I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. After the deconstruction, after grieving the love that never came, there is a space that once was filled with striving, proving, and performing. And now it's ready to be rebuilt. Not with the same tools that shaped your pain, but with new ones, softer, slower, sacred. This is the process of reconstruction. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to heal you and start learning how to love yourself. Not in a cliché, surface-level way, but in real, daily, messy, honest ways. It begins with small acts, allowing yourself to cry without shame, not because something is wrong with you, but because something is finally coming out of you. Letting yourself rest without guilt, not because you earned it, but because you deserve it. Saying no, even when your whole body is wired to say yes, because self-abandonment is no longer your love language. Asking for help, not as a sign of weakness, but as a declaration of humanity. These are not dramatic gestures. They won't make headlines, but they will change your life. Because every time you show up for yourself, every time you respond to your own pain with compassion instead of criticism, you are rewriting the script that was handed to you. The one that said, you're too much, you're not enough, you must earn love. Now you say, I am enough, just as I am. I'm allowed to feel. I am worthy of care, even from myself. This kind of love doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in layers, and sometimes you'll forget. Sometimes you'll fall back into old patterns. That's okay, because healing is not perfection. Healing is permission to be real, to be soft, to be human. You start to notice the shifts. You no longer chase relationships that make you feel small. You no longer silence your emotions to keep the peace. You no longer betray your own needs just to feel wanted. And slowly, you start to feel something new. Peace, wholeness, home, not in someone else, but in you. Because when you begin to give yourself the love that was missing, you stop searching for it in places that can't give it. You become your own safe space, your own warmth, your own source of belonging. And from that place, you begin to build relationships that reflect your worth, dreams that honor your truth, and a life that feels like freedom instead of performance. This is the work, the sacred, ordinary, revolutionary work, not of becoming someone new, but of returning to who you always were, before the world told you to be someone else. Emotional closing. Love begins with you. You've come a long way, through silence, through wounds you couldn't name, through relationships that echoed your pain, through grief, through realization, through the slow, sacred work of healing. And now, you're here. Maybe you still feel broken. Maybe you still carry the coldness of your past. But let this be a truth that sinks in deeper than the old wounds. You were shaped by emotional frost, but you were never made of ice. You have warmth. You have soul. You have a heart that still longs. Not because you are weak, but because you are alive. You may not have received the love you needed. You may have learned to shut down, to shrink, to survive. But now, you get to choose differently. You get to create space where you are allowed to feel, to speak, to rest, to receive. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to perform. You just have to be you. All the parts you once hid, the tears, the softness, the need, are not flaws. They're proof that you were always worthy of love. And that love, it begins in you, not out there, not in someone else's arms, not in approval or performance or perfection. It begins the moment you say, I will no longer abandon myself for love. I will no longer beg for warmth from hands that only know cold. I will no longer wait for someone to rescue me from a pain I've already started to heal. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a soul to be held. By you first, and then by those who meet you in that truth. Virginia Satir once said, life is not what they did to you. It's what you choose to do with it now. So now, choose. Choose to be tender with yourself. Choose to rewrite the story. Choose to stop chasing love and start becoming it for yourself. For the child inside who never got enough. For the adult who now understands why. Because healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means no longer letting the past dictate how you love yourself today. So breathe. You made it. You're here. And from this moment on, you are allowed to love yourself fully, wildly, gently, because you deserve it. Because you always did.